This lecture, America and the Road to War, 1925 to 1940, highlights some of the key challenges in foreign policy faced by America prior to World War II. Context. The time frame is the interwar period from the mid-1920s to 1940. Some of the key themes discussed include post-World War I politics, debts and diplomacy, America's role in the world, the policy of isolationism, and the rise of Japan. For an in-depth overview of key events in Europe during the 1930s, visit themapishistory.com. Click on the World War II menu and watch the map animation moving towards war. Post-World War I politics. America had not joined the League of Nations, despite the efforts of Woodrow Wilson, but they did try to promote world peace through multilateral means. For example, the Kellog-Briand Act was established in 1928. 14 nations signed this pact outlawing war as an official national policy. Debts and diplomacy. Following the Great War, many European countries were struggling to pay off debts accumulated from the conflict. Germany was required to make reparation payments and was struggling with high inflation. The Americans provided loans to many European countries, including Germany. The Dawes Plan was a system of loaning money to European countries, especially Germany, and accruing interest along the way. It is often described as moving American money from one drawer in the cabinet to the next, and gaining interest through the exchange. Take a close look at the graphic detailing the flow of American assistance. The Depression and loans. America had attempted to aid European nations in their recovery from the Great War. The start of the Depression forced America to stop lending money and focus on concerns at home. As a result, European nations continued to struggle, especially Germany. Hitler would manipulate these economic circumstances to gain further popularity. America's role in the world. Latin America. In 1931, President Herbert Hoover announced he would recognize any government in Latin America, regardless of how they gained power. This was a change in policy following Roosevelt's corollary and big stick diplomacy, which stipulated America would involve itself militarily in Central America if needed. The Soviet Union. America finally recognized the Soviet Union as the government of Russia. The leader at this time in Russia was Joseph Stalin. Isolationism. As the prospects of war increased, America reaffirmed its policy of isolationism. It refused to intervene in the Spanish Civil War. In 1935, they enacted the Neutrality Act, which stated that America would not sell military arms to either side. By this point, the president of the nation was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. The rise of Japan. In 1931, Japan invaded mainland China. America disapproved of this action and advocated a naval quarantine of Japan. When the Japanese aggression continued in Asia, America cut off oil trade altogether. The war begins. Here is a basic flowchart of key events during the early phases of the war. After the September 1939 invasion of Poland, France and Britain realized the policy of appeasement had failed. War was soon declared. During the winter of 1939-1940, nothing happened, and journalists began to call the conflict the phony war. However, Hitler was not done. In the spring of 1940, the Nazis invaded much of Western Europe. Over 400,000 Allied troops were surrounded at Dunkirk. Miraculously, over 300,000 would be evacuated to Britain. By June 22, 1940, France had surrendered, and the occupation of France would begin. Soon America would have to make even more difficult choices. For an in-depth overview of 1939 to 1941, log on to themapishistory.com. Click the World War II menu and watch the map animation War in Europe 1939 to 1941. Conclusions. During the interwar period, America tried to balance its powers abroad while still protecting its interests close to home. Over time, it became clear that America would have to be more than an observer from the sidelines. One final event would draw America out of its isolationist shell for good. This event would of course be Pearl Harbor. In the words of FDR, December 7, 1941, a date that will live in infamy.